There was a time when love felt simple. A smile could change your whole day. A voice could feel like home. And then something broke. Not loudly, not all at once. It broke quietly. Through disappointment, through silence, through the moments you pretended you were okay when you weren't. So you promised yourself never again to feel that vulnerable, never again to trust that deeply, never again to love that honestly. But here's the truth. No one tells you. Love doesn't disappear just because you were hurt. It waits, it heals with you, and one day it asks a question you can't ignore. What if loving again isn't weakness, but courage? Today, this isn't a talk about fairy tales or perfect endings. This is about standing back up after heartbreak, about learning how to open your heart without losing yourself, about overcoming fear, doubt, and the ghosts of past love. Because when you choose to love again, you're not repeating the past. You're proving that it didn't defeat you and that is strength. There is a moment in life when love stops feeling like a promise and starts feeling like a risk. Not because love itself changes, but because you do. You've lived long enough to know what it can take from you. You've felt the quiet damage of giving your heart without protection. You've learned that love doesn't always leave loudly. Sometimes it leaves gently, respectfully, and still manages to break something deep inside you. When you fall in love again, it isn't the same innocence as before. It's heavier, it carries memory, it carries hesitation, it carries the echo of every time you trusted and paid for it. When you love again, you are not the person you once were. You are someone who has survived disappointment, someone who has sat alone questioning their worth, someone who has replayed conversations, wondering where things shifted, wondering when love stopped being mutual and became one-sided. You don't step into love anymore with open eyes and no fear. You step in cautiously, testing the ground, aware that one wrong step can pull you back into pain you promised yourself you would never feel again. That's why loving again is not weak, it is not naive, it is not reckless, it is one of the bravest decisions a person can make, because you know exactly what's at stake, you know how deeply it can hurt, you know how long it can take to recover, and yet, despite all that knowledge, despite every scar and every warning voice in your head, you still choose to open your heart again. There's a difference between forgetting pain and forgiving life for it. When you love again, you are not erasing the past. You are carrying it with you, but refusing to let it control you. You remember the nights you couldn't sleep. You remember the days when everything felt heavy. You remember how silence became louder than arguments. Those memories don't disappear just because someone new walks into your life. They stay, they shape you, they slow you down, and maybe they should. Loving again doesn't mean rushing. It doesn't mean diving headfirst and hoping for the best. It means learning how to love with awareness, with boundaries, with self-respect. It means understanding that your heart is not something to give away carelessly anymore. It means recognizing that love should add peace, not anxiety, that it should feel safe, not confusing, that it should feel mutual, not earned through exhaustion. When you fall in love again, fear doesn't disappear. It sits quietly in the background. It watches. It reminds you of how things ended before. It warns you not to trust too fast, not to believe words without actions, not to ignore red flags just because you want something to work. Fear isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's the part of you that learned the hard way. Sometimes it's the voice that says, slow down, pay attention, protect yourself. But fear becomes a problem when it starts running your life, when it stops you from being present, when it convinces you that pain is guaranteed, so why even try? When it tells you that you are safer alone, even when loneliness is quietly eating away at you. Loving again means learning how to listen to fear without letting it decide for you. It means acknowledging it, respecting it, and then choosing courage anyway. Courage doesn't mean being fearless. It means moving forward while fear walks beside you. It means allowing yourself to feel something real, even when your past tells you to stay guarded. It means understanding that not every person is here to repeat your last heartbreak. Some are here to show you what love can look like when it's healthy, when it's patient, when it doesn't demand you to shrink or change who you are. When you love again, you begin to notice the difference between intensity and consistency. You realize that love doesn't have to burn to be real. That calm doesn't mean boring. That stability doesn't mean lack of passion. You learn that someone who shows up every day, who communicates clearly, who respects you, our boundaries is far more valuable than someone who makes your heart race, but your mind restless. You start to understand that real love doesn't make you question your value. It doesn't make you feel replaceable. It doesn't make you beg for attention or affection. When you love again in a healthier way, you begin to feel seen instead of evaluated, chosen instead of tolerated, supported instead of tested. But even then, there are moments when the past tries to interfere. A delayed message can bring back old anxiety. A change in tone can trigger old doubts. A small disagreement can feel bigger than it is because you remember how disagreements used to end. Loving again means learning how to separate what's happening now from what happened before. It means reminding yourself that this is a new chapter, not a continuation of an old story. It takes patience with yourself, with the other person, with the process of rebuilding trust. Trust doesn't return all at once. It comes back slowly through consistency, through honesty, through actions that match words. Loving again means allowing trust to grow naturally instead of forcing it or testing it. You stop trying to control outcomes. You stop loving with the expectation that has to last forever to be meaningful. You start loving for what it is, not what you're afraid it might become. You learn that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. It just has to be sincere. There's also a quiet confidence that comes with loving again, a sense of self you didn't have before. You know who you are now. You know what you will and won't accept. You know that if things don't work out, you will survive. That knowledge changes everything. It takes away desperation. It removes the need to cling. It allows you to love freely without losing yourself. You no longer look for someone to complete you. You look for someone to walk beside you, someone who respects your independence, someone who doesn't feel threatened by your strength. Loving again means choosing partnership over dependency, connection over control. Sometimes loving again feels awkward at first. You're not used to letting someone get close. You're not used to being vulnerable without immediately preparing for disappointment. You might pull back without realizing it. You might test people without meaning to. That's part of healing. That's part of learning how to love in a new way. What matters is awareness, catching yourself when you're reacting out of old pain instead of present reality, giving yourself permission to unlearn patterns that once protected you but no longer serve you. Loving again is as much about healing yourself as it is about connecting with someone else. You begin to see love as a choice rather than a feeling that controls you. A choice you make every day, to communicate instead of disappear, to listen instead of assume, to stay open instead of shutting down. Love becomes intentional, grounded, real. There's a quiet beauty in that kind of love. It doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't need constant reassurance to feel secure. It exists in the small moments, in shared silence, in mutual respect, in knowing that even when things are hard, you are both willing to try. When you love again, you also accept uncertainty. You accept that nothing is guaranteed, that hearts are fragile, that people are imperfect. But you stop letting that truth paralyze you. You accept it as part of being alive, as part of choosing connection in a world where loss is always possible. You realize that the goal of love isn't to avoid pain at all costs. It's to live fully, honestly, and bravely, to experience something real, even if it doesn't last forever, to give and receive love in a way that honors who you are. Loving again doesn't erase the past. It builds on it. It uses the lessons, the mistakes, the heartbreak, and turns them into wisdom. You become more patient, more discerning, more compassionate. You stop romanticizing suffering. You stop confusing chaos with passion. You start to value peace, emotional safety, mutual effort. And in that space, love begins to feel different, not fragile, not overwhelming, but steady, supportive, real, And even on days when doubt creeps in, when fear whispers old stories, when vulnerability feels risky, you remember why you chose to love again. Not because it was easy, not because you were certain, but because you believed that your heart was still capable of something beautiful. Because you refused to let past pain decide your future. Because you understood that being open again was not a sign of weakness, but proof that you had grown strong enough to risk feeling deeply once more. Trust doesn't disappear all at once. It fades quietly, piece by piece, in moments that seem small at first, a promise not kept, a truth delayed, an explanation that doesn't quite align with actions. Over time, those moments stack up and something inside you begins to change. You stop expecting consistency. You start preparing for disappointment. You learn how to brace yourself instead of leaning in. When trust breaks, it doesn't shatter loudly. It erodes slowly until one day you realize you are no longer relaxed in someone's presence. You are alert, careful, guarded. When you think about trusting again, it doesn't feel romantic, it feels dangerous. Because you remember what it cost you last time. You remember how confidently you believed, how fully you relied, how deeply you assumed honesty was mutual. And you remember how it felt when you realized it wasn't. That realization changes you. It teaches you that trust is not automatic, it must be earned. But it also teaches you something else, if you let it, that blind trust is not strength. It's simply untested hope. When you rebuild trust, you don't do it the way you did before. You don't hand it over quickly. You don't give it away because someone says the right things or makes a strong first impression. You move slowly. You observe. You notice patterns. You pay attention to consistency instead of intensity. This isn't cynicism. This is wisdom earned through experience. Rebuilding trust is a quiet process. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush. It grows in the background through repeated actions that match words, through someone showing up when it's inconvenient, through honesty when it would be easier to avoid a conversation, through accountability without excuses. Trust rebuilt this way feels different. It feels grounded, stable, real. At first, rebuilding trust can feel uncomfortable. You might question yourself for not being as open as you once were. You might wonder if you've become too cautious, too guarded, too slow to believe. But what you're actually doing is learning discernment. You're learning the difference between hope and evidence, between charm and character, between intention and behavior. When trust is rebuilt slowly, it becomes stronger than trust given blindly because it's based on reality, not fantasy. It's not fueled by potential, it's supported by proof. Each moment of consistency becomes a brick. Each honest conversation becomes reinforcement. Each time someone respects your boundaries instead of pushing against them, trust deepens quietly. You start to notice how trust is built not through grand gestures, but through small, repeated acts, returning calls when they say they will, apologizing without defensiveness, listening without interrupting, remembering what matters to you. These things might seem ordinary, but they are the foundation of something extraordinary. When trust is rebuilt this way, it doesn't create anxiety, it creates calm. You don't feel the need to constantly check for signs of betrayal. You don't feel the urge to test loyalty. You don't replay conversations searching for hidden meanings. Instead, you feel a steady sense of security, not because you believe nothing can go wrong, but because you trust your ability to recognize when something isn't right. Rebuilding trust also means trusting yourself again. This is the part people often overlook. After betrayal or disappointment, you don't just lose trust in others, you lose trust in your own judgment. You wonder how you miss the signs, you question your instincts, you replay moments looking for the point where you should have known better. Learning to trust yourself again takes time. It means forgiving yourself for choices you made when you didn't know what you know now. It means accepting that you acted with the information you had, that you loved honestly, that you believed because you wanted connection, not because you were careless. When you trust yourself again, you stop being afraid of trusting others because you know that even if things don't work out, you will recognize it sooner. You will respond differently. You will protect yourself without shutting down completely. That confidence changes the way you connect with people. Rebuild trust is not about eliminating risk. It's about understanding it. It's about knowing that vulnerability always carries uncertainty, but choosing to engage anyway with awareness. It's about allowing yourself to believe again without losing your grounding. You also learn that trust is not something you demand. It's something you allow to develop. You don't force it. You don't rush it. You let it evolve naturally at its own pace. When someone pressures you to trust them quickly, that pressure itself becomes information. When someone is patient with your process, that patience becomes evidence. Rebuilding trust means being honest about your fears instead of pretending they don't exist. It means communicating boundaries clearly instead of expecting someone to gut them. It means saying what you need without apologizing for it. Trust grows where there is clarity. Sometimes rebuilding trust brings up old triggers, a familiar tone, a repeated behavior, a situation that reminds you of past hurt. In those moments, you have a choice. You can react from old wounds, or you can pause and assess what's actually happening now. This pause is powerful. It's where growth lives. You begin to separate intuition from fear. Intuition is calm. It observes. It signals quietly. Fear is loud. It jumps to conclusions. It assumes the worst. Rebuilding trust means learning how to listen to intuition without letting fear take over. As trust rebuilds, you notice a shift in how you show up. You become more present, less guarded, more open in a grounded way. You don't overshare to feel close. You don't withhold to feel safe. You find balance. And that balance creates deeper connection. Trust rebuilt slowly also creates resilience. When challenges arise, you don't immediately assume the worst. You don't shut down at the first sign of conflict. You communicate. You address issues instead of avoiding them. You believe that problems can be worked through, not because you're desperate, but because you've seen consistency over time. You learn that trust doesn't mean perfection. It means repair. It means knowing that mistakes will happen, but accountability follows. That honesty comes before defensiveness. That effort doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. Rebuilt trust allows you to relax into connection. You stop performing. You stop trying to be someone you think the other person wants. You show up as yourself, knowing that acceptance is based on what you are, not who you pretend to be. There is a quiet freedom in that, a sense of emotional safety that doesn't depend on constant reassurance. You feel secure, not because you're clinging to certainty, but because you're grounded in reality. Trust rebuilt slowly becomes stronger because it's layered. It has depth. It has history. It's been tested by time and consistency. It doesn't collapse at the first sign of stress. It adapts. It holds. You also learn that not everyone deserves your trust, and that's okay. Trust is not a moral obligation. It's a response to behavior. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your heart. You stop equating boundaries with coldness. You understand that boundaries are what allow trust to exist in a healthy way. As trust rebuilds, love changes too. It becomes less dramatic and more meaningful. Less about intensity and more about reliability. Less about promises and more about presence. You stop romanticizing unpredictability. You stop excusing inconsistency. You stop chasing clarity, because clarity is already there in actions that align with words, in behavior that doesn't need explanation. Rebuilding trust also teaches patience, not just with others, but with yourself. You allow yourself to take time. You allow yourself to feel uncertain without forcing resolution. You allow connection to unfold naturally. There is strength in that patience, a quiet confidence that says you don't need to rush to secure something real. What's meant to grow will grow without pressure. When trust is rebuilt this way, it doesn't just support love, it supports peace. And peace becomes the new standard. You no longer tolerate relationships that disturb your inner balance. You no longer confuse anxiety with excitement. You recognize the difference. You understand that trust is not about guaranteeing outcomes. It's about choosing honesty, consistency, and self-respect in the present moment. It's about engaging fully while staying grounded. And as trust continues to rebuild, moment by moment, action by action, you realize that this version of trust is not fragile. It's flexible. It can bend without breaking. It can hold complexity. It can survive reality. Because this trust is not built on assumptions, it's built on evidence, not on fantasy, but on experience, not on urgency, but on intention. And that is what makes it stronger than trust ever was when it was given blindly. Loving again means choosing growth over fear. It means stepping into a world where past pain has left its mark, but it doesn't dictate your next move. It's a conscious decision, a quiet declaration that you will not let what once broke you prevent you from experiencing life fully. Growth isn't something that happens overnight. It is cultivated through reflection, patience, and the willingness to face discomfort. To love again after heartbreak is to acknowledge fear without letting it dominate, to let your heart remember hope, even when your mind warns you against it. Every time you hesitate before leaning in, every time you pause to measure the risk, you are practicing courage. Not the loud kind, but the steady, persistent kind that builds character over time. Choosing growth over fear means confronting your insecurities and understanding that they are not permanent truths. Fear is a shadow cast by memory. It whispers reminders of betrayal, disappointment, and loss. It tells you that the heart you once gave away so freely was misused, and that the world is dangerous, that vulnerability is risky. And yet growth is the recognition that these fears, though real, do not define your capacity to love. They are markers of your past, not limitations for your future. When you choose to grow, you acknowledge the scars, but you refuse to let them close the doors to connection. You step forward with humility, learning that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to endure it. Loving again is an act of self-awareness. It requires understanding what you bring to a relationship, what patterns you've carried, and how past experiences influence your choices. Growth is recognizing your role in your own happiness. It's knowing that a partner will not complete you, but that shared growth with someone who respects your journey can enrich life in ways solitude cannot. To embrace love again is to understand that it will not erase your past, but can illuminate it, teaching lessons you may have overlooked and guiding you toward a more grounded, compassionate way of being. When you step into love with growth as your guide, patience becomes essential. You must learn to navigate relationships with deliberate care, acknowledging that both your heart and the heart of the person you love are fragile yet resilient. Patience is not passive, it is an active engagement with reality. It is waiting for trust to develop naturally, allowing intimacy to deepen without forcing it, and respecting the natural pace of emotional connection. Growth over fear requires that you resist rushing into comfort or security too quickly, that you honor the process of understanding each other, and that you cultivate a relationship that is not based solely on desire but on mutual respect and sustained effort. Choosing growth over fear also means embracing discomfort as a teacher. The moments when your heart races with doubt, when insecurity surfaces, when old memories threaten to cloud your present, these are opportunities for learning. They force you to examine what triggers your fear, to confront assumptions you may have held about love, and to recalibrate your expectations. The path to loving again is not without challenges, and growth means allowing these challenges to shape you rather than allowing them to push you away. You realize that discomfort is not a signal to retreat, but a guidepost for understanding yourself and the dynamics of connection. Another crucial aspect of loving again with growth is communication. Open, honest dialogue is not optional, it is foundational. Growth demands that you express needs clearly, that you listen attentively, and that you cultivate empathy. Fear often silences us, making us withdraw or mask our true feelings. But growth requires that you confront fear with courage, that you speak when it matters, and that you seek to understand before assuming. Loving again becomes an opportunity to practice emotional literacy, to articulate feelings with authenticity, and to nurture a relationship where both parties feel seen, heard, and valued. Growth over fear also involves self-compassion. It requires forgiving yourself for past mistakes, recognizing that vulnerability is not a flaw, and treating your own heart with the same patience you would extend to another. Often fear is amplified by self-criticism. You replay past errors in your mind, fearing repetition, fearing inadequacy, fearing the pain that once came so sharply. Choosing growth is the acknowledgement that your past experiences are not indictments of your character, but lessons that inform wiser choices. It is learning to treat yourself with understanding, kindness, and respect, so that when you extend love to someone else, it is grounded in a stable, secure self. Loving again with growth also transforms your understanding of intimacy. Intimacy is no longer just physical or romantic, it becomes emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. It is a willingness to be seen fully, to reveal your fears and desires without shame, and to receive the set transparency in return. Growth teaches you that authentic connection cannot be rushed, that it cannot be faked, and that it thrives when both individuals are committed to their own development as well as to the health of the relationship. Loving again becomes a journey of discovery, not only of the other person, but of yourself, exploring layers of identity, expectation, and shared experience that deepen connection over time. When fear arises, as it inevitably does, growth requires discernment. Not all fear is invalid, and not all risks are worth taking. Choosing growth over fear does not mean ignoring warning signs or staying in harmful situations. Rather, it is about differentiating between protective instincts rooted in wisdom and paralyzing doubt rooted in past trauma. It is about being honest with yourself about what you can trust, what you are ready to accept, and what aligns with your values. Growth guides you to make choices that honor your emotional well-being while remaining open to love's possibilities. Part of growth in loving again is embracing impermanence. You recognize that life is uncertain, that relationships can evolve, that feelings can change, and that outcomes are never guaranteed. This awareness does not diminish the intensity of your love. Instead, it enhances it, allowing you to appreciate each moment fully, to give without clinging, and to receive without fear of loss. Growth teaches presence, grounding your heart in the reality of now, rather than in anxieties about the past or speculation about the future. Choosing growth over fear also reshapes expectations. You learn to value progress over perfection, consistency over drama, understanding over your assumption, and collaboration over control. Fear often amplifies unrealistic expectations, demanding immediate assurance or perfect behavior. Growth tempers these demands, encouraging patience, forgiveness, and flexibility. You see relationships as evolving processes, not static achievements, and love as an ongoing practice rather than a one-time acquisition. This perspective nurtures resilience, allowing love to flourish even amid challenges and uncertainties. Loving again with growth fosters emotional courage. It is the ability to remain vulnerable even when your heart remembers pain, the willingness to hope even when disappointment has visited before, and the strength to trust even when betrayal has left its mark. Emotional courage is not reckless. It is measured, thoughtful, and aware of risks while refusing to surrender to them. It is the force that keeps your heart open without letting it be naive, that allows connection without sacrificing self-respect, and that empowers you to embrace love as a transformative experience rather than a potential threat. Growth over fear also cultivates gratitude. When you have loved and lost, when you have been hurt and healed, appreciation for connection deepens. You notice the small acts of care, the moments of laughter, the quiet gestures of support. Gratitude anchors you in the positive dimensions of relationship, preventing fear from overwhelming your perception and allowing you to value what exists rather than obsess over what could go wrong. Loving again becomes a practice of noticing, honoring, and cherishing, rather than clinging, controlling, or doubting. When you embrace growth, love is no longer reactive. You stop ing reassurance, and start creating security. You stop seeking validation and start providing it for yourself. You stop avoiding pain and start navigating it with awareness. Growth transforms love from an emotional gamble into a conscious commitment. It equips you to engage fully, to invest honestly, and to sustain connection even when it requires patience, reflection, or compromise. Choosing growth over fear also reshapes the rhythm of intimacy. You develop a sense of timing, of when to step forward and when to pause, of when to speak and when to listen. You learn that vulnerability is most powerful when offered intentionally, not impulsively, and that trust is built through consistency rather than declarations. Loving again becomes an art of balance, harmonizing openness with caution, desire with discernment, and hope with wisdom. Growth transforms disappointment into opportunity. Moments of friction, misunderstanding, or temporary hurt are no longer catastrophic. They are indicators, teaching tools, moments to reassess boundaries, improve communication, and reinforce emotional resilience. Fear often magnifies these moments, making them appear insurmountable. Growth reframes them, providing perspective, patience, and a path toward deeper understanding. Loving again becomes a process of refinement, not avoidance. With growth, love develops roots that are strong yet flexible. It can weather storms, absorb mistakes, and adapt to changing circumstances. Fear, by contrast, constricts, resists, and isolates. By choosing growth, you ensure that your heart is not only open but anchored. It can give freely while remaining grounded, receive fully without losing balance, and engage deeply without collapsing under uncertainty. When love is guided by growth, it also cultivates empathy. You learn to recognize not only your own patterns and fears, but also those of the person you love. You see the ways their past shapes their present, the insecurities that influence their behavior, and the desires that drive their choices. Empathy allows connection to deepen beyond surface level attraction, creating understanding that nurtures trust, compassion, and mutual respect. Loving again is ultimately an act of hope. It is hope tempered by wisdom, shaped by experience, and guided by intentionality. Growth ensures that this hope is not naive but deliberate. It teaches you that vulnerability is valuable, that connection is worth pursuing, and that love's transformative power is not diminished by past hurt, but strengthened by resilience, insight, and awareness.